A split-second decision on a dusty stretch of highway in Cedar Ridge, South Carolina, changed two men's lives forever. $2.1 million. That is the price of arrogance. It started with a broken taillight that wasn't even broken. Officer Colton Reed thought he was doing what he always did, flexing his badge, intimidating a stranger, and teaching a lesson to a man he judged the second he saw his skin color behind the wheel. He thought he had a helpless victim. He was wrong. Dead wrong. The man in handcuffs wasn't just a driver. He was Special Agent Derek Vaughn, a decorated veteran of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. And he wasn't just passing through town. He was hunting what happens when a bully with a badge picks a fight with the federal government. You're about to find out. This is the story of how one traffic stop ended a career, bankrupted a city, and served the coldest plate of karma you've ever seen. The heat in Cedar Ridge was the kind that didn't just sit on you. It owned you. Special Agent Derek Vaughn adjusted the AC vents in his rented charcoal gray Chevrolet Impala. He wasn't in his bureau SUV, and he certainly wasn't wearing the windbreaker with the bold yellow letters on the back. Today, Derek was just a black man in a polo shirt and aviator sunglasses cruising 5 miles under the speed limit. He checked his rearview mirror. Nothing but heat, haze, and empty road. Derek was tired. He'd spent the past several months deep diving into the financial records of the Cedar Ridge Municipal Court. There were discrepancies, money seized in civil asset forfeitures that never made it to the state treasury. It was a classic skimming operation, but he needed the smoking gun. He needed to see how the officers on the ground operated. He didn't know that the smoking gun was about to pull him over. A mile back, sitting in a speed trap concealed by a billboard for a divorce lawyer, sat Officer Colton Reed. Reed was a veteran of the force, a man whose high school football glory days were fading faster than his hairline. He sat in his cruiser chewing a toothpick, bored out of his mind. Unit 4, Alpha to dispatch. Reed drawled into his radio. Traffic is dead out here. Thinking about heading back to the barn. Negative. 4 Alpha. The dispatcher crackled back. Chief wants visibility on Route 9. We've got complaints about runners coming up from Florida. Reed sighed, shifting his weight. His uniform was tight around the midsection. That's when he saw it. The gray Impala. It was moving slow. Too slow. Rental, Reed muttered to himself. He narrowed his eyes as the car passed. Tinted windows, but not dark enough to hide the profile of the driver. Reed sat up straighter. A black male alone driving a newer model rental car under the speed limit. In Reed's mind, that didn't spell tourist or businessman. It spelled drug mule, trying not to get noticed. He threw the cruiser into gear, gravel crunching under his tires as he peeled out from behind the billboard. He didn't turn his lights on immediately. He wanted to stalk the prey first. In the Impala, Derek saw the nose of the Crown Victoria dip into view in his mirror. He sighed, his grip tightening slightly on the wheel. He knew the game. He'd been a black man in America long before he was a Fed. "Here we go," Derek whispered. He checked his speedometer, dead center in the limit. He checked his lane position, perfect. He checked his seatbelt, clicked. Reed tailed him for some distance. He ran the plates. They came back clean. A fleet vehicle registered to Hertz. That only confirmed Reed's suspicion. Traffickers always used rentals. Reed needed a reason. He waited for a lane change, a swerve, anything. Derek gave him nothing. Finally, Reed's patience snapped. He flicked a switch. The red and blue lights exploded to life, reflecting off the pristine trunk of the Impala. Derek didn't panic. He hit his blinker immediately, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the wide gravel shoulder. He put the car in park, rolled down all 4 windows, a habit he had learned to keep officers at ease, and placed both hands on the top of the steering wheel. Fingers spread. He watched the side mirror. The cruiser stopped. The door opened. Officer Colton Reed stepped out. He didn't adjust his hat. He adjusted his gun belt. He didn't reach for his ticket book first. He unsnapped the retention strap on his holster. Derek saw it all. He began to profile the threat. Aggressive posture, approaching the blind spot, hand on weapon. This guy isn't looking to write a ticket. He's looking for a fight. Reed walked up to the passenger side first, peering in. He saw the empty back seat. Then he circled the back of the car, tapping the tail light, a superstition or a way to leave a fingerprint. Derek didn't care. Reed finally appeared at the driver's window. He was wearing mirrored sunglasses, chewing that toothpick aggressively. "License and registration," Reed said. No greeting. No good afternoon. "Good afternoon, officer," Derek said, his voice calm, practiced. "I have my license in my back right pocket. My rental agreement is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for them now." Reed's jaw tightened. He hated it when they were calm. It felt like arrogance. "Just get the ID, boy. Don't narrate your life story, boy." The word hung in the humid air like a foul smell. Derek's internal radar went from yellow to red. This wasn't just a bad stop. This was a hostile one. "I'm reaching for my wallet," Derek repeated, moving slowly. He produced his South Carolina driver's license, his personal one, not his badge yet. He wanted to see how far this would go. Reed snatched the plastic from Derek's hand. He glanced at it, then back at Derek. "Derek Vaughn," Reed read, sounding out the syllables like they were foreign. "You from Columbia, Vaughn?" "I live in Columbia." "Yes. What are you doing in Cedar Ridge?" "Passing through. I'm on my way to a meeting." "A meeting?" Reed scoffed. "What kind of meeting? You selling something?" "I work for the government," Derek said vaguely. It was the truth, but not the whole truth. Reed stepped back, looking at the car again. "Government, huh? You look like you work for the government about as much as I work for the circus." "Step out of the car." Derek paused. "Officer, am I under arrest?" "I said step out of the car." Reed's hand went to the handle of his service weapon. "I smell marijuana. I have probable cause to search this vehicle." Derek's eyes narrowed behind his aviators. He didn't smoke. The car was a rental that smelled like new car spray and bleach. This was the lie. This was the bridge too far. "Officer," Derek said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. "There is no marijuana in this vehicle. I do not consent to a search. If you order me out, I will comply under duress, but you are violating my Fourth Amendment rights." Reed's face turned a shade of crimson that rivaled the lights on his roof. He ripped the door open. "Get your ass out of the car now." Derek unbuckled his seatbelt. He knew that any sudden movement now could result in a bullet. He stepped out, rising to his full 6'2" height. He was taller than Reed by several inches and in better shape. Reed didn't like that either. He shoved Derek against the side of the Impala. "Hands on the hood. Spread them." "I am complying," Derek said loudly for the benefit of the dash cam he hoped was recording on Reed's cruiser. "I am not resisting." Reed kicked Derek's ankles apart harder than necessary. Pain shot up Derek's leg, but he didn't flinch. He just cataloged it. Assault. Unlawful detention. Reed began to pat him down roughly. He reached into Derek's pockets, pulling out a cell phone and keys, tossing them onto the hood. Then he felt the bulge under Derek's left arm. Reed froze. "Gun!" Reed screamed. He jumped back, drawing his own weapon and pointing it directly at the back of Derek's head. "Don't you move. I'll blow your head off. Don't you move. Derek didn't flinch. I have a weapon, he said clearly. It is holstered. I have a permit. It is on my right hip. The object under my left arm is my credentials. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Reed was shaking. The adrenaline dump was making him erratic. This was the most dangerous moment. A terrified, incompetent cop with a gun is deadlier than a criminal. Get on the ground, on your knees now. Derek slowly lowered himself to the gravel. The rocks bit into his expensive slacks. He laced his fingers behind his head. Officer, Derek said, listen to me carefully. I am a federal agent. My badge is in my jacket pocket. If you check it, we can resolve this. Reed wasn't listening. He was in kill or be killed mode, fighting a phantom enemy. He rushed forward, jamming his knee into Derek's back, driving his face into the dirt. Stop resisting, Reed yelled. Even though Derek was perfectly still, he grabbed Derek's wrists, twisting them violently behind his back. The handcuffs ratcheted tight, too tight. The metal bit into the bone. You're done, pal, Reed panted, leaning his full weight on Derek's neck. Carrying a concealed weapon, resisting arrest. Assault on an officer. I haven't assaulted anyone, Derek mumbled, his mouth half full of dust. Check my pocket. I'm not checking anything until you're in the cage, Reed spat. He hauled Derek up by the handcuffs, wrenching his shoulders. Derek grunted. He was being manhandled, humiliated, and treated like a violent felon on the side of a public road. Cars were passing by, slowing down to gawk at the black man being arrested by the white cop. Reed marched him to the cruiser and shoved him into the back seat. The plastic seat was hard, the space cramped. Reed slammed the door, wiping sweat from his forehead. He felt like a hero. He'd caught one. A guy with a gun, probably a big-time runner. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, 4 Alpha, 1 in custody, weapon recovered, requesting a tow for the subject's vehicle. I'm going to toss it now. Copy 4 Alpha, tow is en route. Reed walked back to the Impala. He was going to find the drugs. He knew they were there. He pulled on a pair of latex gloves and dove into the car. He tore through the center console. Nothing. He ripped open the glove box, just the rental agreement. He looked under the seats. Empty water bottles. Where is it? Reed muttered. He popped the trunk. He threw the spare tire cover aside. Nothing. He was sweating profusely now. If there were no drugs, the probable cause was thin, but he had the gun. That was enough. A gun on a drug runner was a felony. He went back to the interior. He picked up Derek's jacket, which had been lying on the passenger seat. He felt the heavy object in the inside pocket, the wallet. Reed opened it, expecting to find a fake ID or a wad of cash. Instead, a gold shield glinted in the sunlight. Reed blinked. He tilted the leather wallet to catch the light. United States Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent. Below the badge was a photo ID card. Derek Vaughn, Special Agent. Reed's stomach dropped. It felt like he had swallowed a stone. The heat of the day suddenly felt cold. He looked from the badge to the back of his cruiser where Derek Vaughn was staring right at him through the cage mesh. Derek wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. He was just watching. And in that look, Reed didn't see a prisoner. He saw a predator who had just let the trap snap shut on his own leg. Reed's partner, Officer Kendra Voss, pulled up in her unit just then. She was younger, sharper, and had a conscience. She saw Reed standing by the Impala, holding a wallet, looking like he'd seen a ghost. She stepped out of her car. Colton, you good? Dispatch said you found a gun. Reed couldn't speak. He just held the wallet out to her. Voss took it. She looked at the badge. She looked at the Impala. She looked at the prisoner in Reed's car. "Colton," she whispered, her face draining of color. "What did you do?" He was resisting," Reed stammered, his voice cracking. "He had a gun. He didn't tell me who he was. I told him 3 times. Derek's voice came from the open window of the cruiser. It was calm, projecting perfectly over the distance. "I told him I was a federal agent. I told him where my credentials were. He told me to shut up and put a knee on my neck." Voss looked at Reed. The look was one of pure horror. "Get him out," Voss hissed. "Get him out of those cuffs right now." Reed shook his head, a sudden surge of stubborn panic and denial taking over. No. It's fake. It's gotta be fake. These guys forge this stuff all the time. I'm running him. I'm booking him." "Colton, don't be an idiot." "I'm the arresting officer," Reed shouted, trying to regain control of a world that was spinning off its axis. "I say it's a good collar. We take him in. We sort it out at the station." He stomped back to his cruiser, jumped in the driver's seat, and slammed the door. He glared at Derek in the rearview mirror. "You think a piece of tin scares me?" Reed said, trying to sound tough but failing. "We'll see what the database says." Derek leaned back against the hard plastic. A small, cold smile touched his lips. "Yes, Officer Reed," Derek said softly. "We certainly will." The ride to the Cedar Ridge precinct was silent, save for the hum of the tires and the frantic clicking of Reed's radio as he messaged the dispatcher to run a high-priority background check. Derek sat in the back, his hands numb. The circulation was cutting off, but he didn't complain. He needed the bruises. He needed the medical report. Every minute these cuffs stayed on was another 0 on the check the city would eventually write. They pulled into the sally port of the police station. It was a concrete block building that smelled of stale coffee and bleach. Reed hauled Derek out of the car. "Move," Reed barked, grabbing Derek's upper arm. They walked into the booking area. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Ellis with a mustache that had seen better decades, looked up from his computer. "What do we have, Reed?" "The runner?" Ellis asked. "Possession of a firearm, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct." Reed rattled off. He slapped Derek's wallet closed onto the counter. "Claims he's a Fed. Probably a fake ID." Ellis raised an eyebrow. He reached for the wallet. At that moment, Officer Voss burst through the doors behind them. She had driven like a maniac to get there. "Ellis, don't book him," she shouted. Reed spun around. "Back off, Kendra. This is my collar." Ellis opened the wallet. He looked at the badge. He looked at the ID. Then he did something Reed didn't expect. He picked up his phone and dialed a number on a sticky note attached to his monitor. "Who are you calling?" Reed demanded. "The Columbia field office," Ellis said, his voice flat. "To verify." Reed scoffed. "Waste of time?" 2 minutes. That's how long the room stood in silence. Ellis spoke in hushed tones into the receiver. Yes, sir. Physical description matches. Yes, we have him. 1 moment." Ellis slowly hung up the phone. He looked at Colton Reed with an expression that wasn't anger. It was pity. "Colton," Ellis said quietly. "Unlock the cuffs." "What, is it confirmed?" "That was the assistant special agent in charge," Ellis said. "He says if Agent Vaughn is not released within minutes, and if he has a single scratch on him, he is bringing a federal civil rights task force down on this department by sundown." Reed went pale. The reality finally pierced his skull. It wasn't a fake. I followed protocol," Reed stammered. He resisted. "Unlock the cuffs, Colton," Ellis roared, slamming his hand on the desk. Reed fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly, he dropped them once. He finally managed to insert the key into the handcuffs on Derek's wrists. Click, click. The metal swung open. Derek brought his hands forward. They were swollen. Deep red grooves circled his wrists where the metal had bitten into the skin. He rotated his shoulders. A sickening pop echoed in the quiet room. He didn't rub his wrists. He didn't look at Reed. He looked at Sergeant Ellis. "I need my phone," Derek said, "and I need the number for the chief of police." "Chief Kane is in a meeting," Reed blurted out, trying to regain some authority. Derek turned to Reed. It was the first time he had looked him in the eye since the car. "You have the right to remain silent," Derek said, his voice like ice. "I suggest you use it." Just then, the double doors of the precinct swung open. Chief Roland Kane walked in looking flushed. He had clearly been summoned by dispatch. He took one look at the scene. The FBI agent in a torn polo shirt, the terrified officers, the bruising on the wrists. "What the hell is going on here?" Kane demanded. "Officer Reed assaulted me during a traffic stop," Derek said calmly. "He ignored my credentials, used excessive force, and arrested me without probable cause. I am Special Agent Derek Vaughn, FBI." Kane looked at Reed. "Colton, is this true?" "He was acting suspicious, Chief. He fit the profile. He had a gun." "I have a badge," Derek shouted, his composure finally cracking, just enough to show the fury underneath, "which you ignored because you were too busy calling me boy and jamming my face into the dirt." The room went dead silent. The racial slur hung in the air. Kane closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. He knew Reed. He knew Reed's history. There had been complaints before. A college kid from Atlanta, a grandmother from Charleston, but they always swept it under the rug. "Agent Vaughn," Kane said, stepping forward, hand extended. "I'm sure this is a massive misunderstanding. Officer Reed is zealous. Let's go to my office. We can sort this out." Derek looked at the hand but didn't take it. "No, Chief. We're not sorting this out in your office. We're sorting this out in federal court. I'm not here to talk. I'm here to wait for my supervisor." Derek walked over to the bench in the holding area and sat down. "I'm not leaving until I have a copy of the incident report, the body cam footage, and Officer Reed's badge number." Reed let out a nervous laugh. "Body cam? Joke's on you, pal. My battery died. I forgot to charge it." Derek looked at Reed, and then he smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile. "Is that so?" Derek asked. "Well, Officer Reed, it's a good thing I have a dash cam in my rental, front and rear facing, and it uploads to the cloud in real time." Reed's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the counter to steady himself. The trap hadn't just snapped, it had crushed him. The air in the Cedar Ridge precinct had changed. It was no longer stale, it was suffocating. The silence that had fallen over the booking room wasn't peaceful. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of a bomb waiting to detonate. Chief Roland Kane, a man who had spent decades navigating the gray areas of small-town policing, knew he was standing on the precipice of a disaster that could swallow his entire department. He looked at Derek Vaughn, who was still sitting on the bench, rubbing his wrists. The red welts were darkening into bruises. "Agent Vaughn," Kane said, his voice dropping to a conciliatory murmur. "Please come to my office. Let's get you some ice. Let's get you a coffee. We don't need to do this out here in front of the staff." Derek looked up. His eyes were dry, his expression unreadable. "I am not a guest, Chief. I am a victim of a felony assault. Would you offer coffee to a civilian you just dragged in here for driving while black?" Kane winced. "Now look, Officer Reed, he's a good kid. He's got a clean record. He made a mistake in the heat of the moment. We can handle this internally. You know how it is. The job is stressful. We look out for our own." Derek stood up slowly. The movement was stiff. That's the problem, Chief. I am your own. I carry the same badge. I swore the same oath. And your officer didn't see a brother in blue. He saw a target. And if he did it to me, a federal agent with the training to de-escalate, imagine what he's done to the people in this town who don't have a badge to save them. Kane stiffened. He realized the Brotherhood angle wasn't going to work. He switched tactics. If you file a formal complaint, Agent Vaughn, it's going to be your word against his. The dash cam... Well, technology fails. Files get corrupted. It happens. It was a veiled threat. Derek caught it immediately. Is that right? Derek said, his voice dangerously low. Files get corrupted. Is that how you run things in Cedar Ridge? Evidence just disappears? Kane didn't answer. He turned to Sergeant Ellis. Ellis, put Agent Vaughn in the conference room. Get him some water. I need to speak with Officer Reed. Alone. Outside in the scorching heat of the back lot, Colton Reed was pacing like a caged animal. He had been banished from the building by the chief, told to cool off, but he couldn't cool off. The adrenaline was turning into a cold, sick dread. The dash cam. That was the nail in the coffin. Reed knew exactly what he had done. He knew he hadn't smelled marijuana. He knew he had escalated the stop because he was bored and angry. He knew he had ignored the badge because his pride wouldn't let him back down to a black man. If that video existed, he wasn't just fired. He was going to prison. He pulled out his personal cell phone and dialed the number of the tow truck driver, a guy named Roy, who owed Reed a few favors for overlooking expired tags on his fleet. Roy. Yeah, it's Reed. That Impala you just picked up on Route 9. Where is it? Just pulling into the yard now, Colton. Roy's voice crackled. Why? You leave your sunglasses in it? Something like that. Reed lied, sweat stinging his eyes. Listen, don't log it yet. Don't put it in the system. I'm coming down there. I need to check something in the glove box. Just 5 minutes alone with the car. Can you do that for me? There was a pause. I don't know, Colton. The ticket said federal hold. That's heavy stuff. Reed snapped. Who keeps your trucks on the road? Who looks the other way when you overload the flatbeds? 5 minutes. Gate code now. All right. Gate code is 4490, but make it quick. Reed hung up. He jumped into his personal truck, a lifted Ford F-150, and peeled out of the employee lot. He needed that SD card. If he could just get the card, he could snap it in half, toss it in a storm drain, and then it would be his word against the angry suspect. He could say the camera wasn't even recording. He drove fast, blowing through 2 stop signs. He reached the impound yard in minutes. The chain-link fence rattled as it slid open. There it was, the gray Impala sitting forlornly next to a wrecked sedan. Reed parked his truck to block the view from the road. He jumped out, looking around. The yard was empty. Roy was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the office to claim plausible deniability. Reed ran to the Impala. He tried the door, locked. He cursed. He looked around for a rock, a brick, anything to smash the window. He grabbed a tire iron from the bed of his truck. He raised the iron, aiming for the passenger side window. Police! Drop the weapon! The voice boomed from behind a stack of crushed cars. Reed froze. He spun around. Officer Kendra Voss was standing there, her service weapon drawn and leveled at his chest. Next to her was Sergeant Ellis. Colton, Voss said, her voice shaking with emotion. What are you doing here? I'm just securing evidence. Braden, we heard you on the radio asking for the tow location, Voss yelled. Ellis tracked your phone. Drop the iron. You're turning on me, Reed sneered, his face twisting into a mask of betrayal. For him? For some outsider? I'm doing my job, Voss said, stepping forward. You're about to commit a felony, Colton. Tampering with evidence. Burglary. Don't add to the list. Put it down. You don't understand, Reed pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. If that video gets out, my life is over. I have a mortgage, Kendra. I have kids. You should have thought about that before you put your knee on a federal agent's neck, Ellis said, stepping out from behind Voss. He looked tired, old, and disappointed. It's over, son. Put it down. Reed looked at the car. He looked at the tire iron. For a split second, he calculated the odds. Could he smash the window, grab the camera, and run? Then he heard the sirens. Not one, not two. A chorus of them, and not just police sirens. The deep, guttural wail of heavy SUVs. Reed dropped the tire iron. It clattered on the gravel. He sank to his knees, burying his face in his hands. Back at the station, the front doors didn't just open. They were practically blown off their hinges. Special Agent in Charge Marcus Hale walked in first. He was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. Impeccable suit and eyes that could cut glass. Behind him flowed a river of navy blue windbreakers with bold yellow letters, FBI. They didn't stop at the desk. They didn't ask for permission. They moved with the fluid, terrifying precision of a wolf pack. Hale walked straight to the conference room where Derek was waiting. He opened the door. He saw Derek's wrists. He saw the dust on his clothes. Report, Hale said. One word. Traffic stop. Racial profiling, unlawful detention, excessive force. Officer Colton Reed. Chief Kane is aware and attempted to coerce me into dropping the matter. Hale nodded. He turned and walked out into the main bullpen. Chief Roland Kane was standing there looking like a captain whose ship had just been torpedoed. Who is in charge here? Hale demanded, his voice filling the room. I am, Kane said, trying to muster some dignity. Chief Kane, and you are trespassing in my... I am Special Agent in Charge Marcus Hale of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Hale interrupted. And as of this moment, this precinct is a crime scene. No one leaves. No one touches a computer. No one shreds a document. If a single piece of paper goes missing, I will charge every person in this room with obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Kane gaped. You can't do that. This is a local matter. Hale stepped into Kane's personal space. When you put one of my agents in handcuffs for driving a rental car, you made it a federal matter. We are taking custody of all evidence. We are taking custody of the servers, and we are taking custody of Officer Reed. Reed isn't here, Kane stammered. We know, Hale said. He tapped his earpiece. Team 2 just secured him at the impound yard. He was attempting to destroy the dash cam footage. Caught in the act by your own officers. Kane's face went gray. The cover-up hadn't just failed. It had imploded. Hale turned to his team. Tear this place apart. I want Reed's personnel file. I want his disciplinary history. I want every body cam video he's ever recorded, and get a medic for Agent Vaughn. As the FBI agent swarmed the office, seizing hard drives and boxing up files, Derek Vaughn walked out of the conference room. He stood next to Hale, watching the chaos. You okay, Derek? Hale asked quietly. I will be, Derek said. But we're going to need a bigger box for the evidence. This wasn't just a bad stop, Marcus. This whole department is rotten. I can smell it. Hale smiled grimly. Then let's clean house. The fallout was nuclear. By the next morning, the mug shot of Officer Colton Reed was plastered across every news network in the country. But that was just the surface. Beneath the sensational headlines, a legal and investigative machine was grinding into gear. Fueled by the unlimited resources of the Department of Justice, Derek Vaughn spent the hours that followed in a whirlwind of medical exams and debriefings. The doctors documented everything. nerve damage in the left wrist, a hairline fracture in the right radial bone, contusions on the neck and back, and a mild concussion. These weren't just injuries. They were line items on a lawsuit. Derek hired Elijah Graves to represent him in the civil suit. Graves was a legend in the civil rights community, a shark in a three-piece suit who had sued more police departments than most people had visited. He was known for his theatrical courtroom style and his ruthlessness in depositions. "They're going to try to settle fast," Graves told Derek as they sat in his high-rise office in Atlanta. "They want this to go away before the election cycle. They'll offer you $500,000 and a non-disclosure agreement." "I don't want their money," Derek said, staring out the window. "I want the truth. I want Reed's badge, and I want to know how many others there were." "Oh, we'll get the money," Graves said, tapping a gold pen on his mahogany desk. "We'll get the money because that's the only language cities understand. But to get the truth, that's where the FBI investigation comes in." And the investigation was yielding fruit. Rotten fruit. While Graves drafted the civil complaint, Vaughn versus City of Cedar Ridge, Colton Reed, and Roland Kane, Agent Hale's team was dissecting the Cedar Ridge Police Department. They found the ghost files hidden in a subfolder on the chief's personal drive, encrypted but easily cracked by the Bureau's cyber division, were dozens of suppressed complaints against Colton Reed. Complaint after complaint. A grandmother claimed Reed threw her to the ground during a stop for a broken taillight. Outcome: unfounded. A college student alleged Reed planted a baggie of cocaine in his car. The student dropped the complaint after Reed threatened to arrest his girlfriend. Outcome: withdrawn. Excessive force against a diabetic man having a medical episode. Reed tased him 3 times. Outcome: within policy. It was a pattern of terror. Reed was a predator who used his badge to hunt the vulnerable, and Kane was the gatekeeper who ensured no one ever found out. But the real smoking gun was the dash cam footage from Derek's Impala. The FBI tech team retrieved the cloud data. They invited Graves and Derek to view it in the conference room. The video played on the big screen. It was high-definition 4K video with crystal-clear audio. They watched Reed pull the car over. They heard the politeness in Derek's voice. They heard the slur, "boy," drop from Reed's lips like venom. They saw Reed escalate, scream, and then the pivotal moment. Derek clearly stating, "I am a federal agent. My badge is in my jacket pocket." And Reed's response, "Shut up. Shut your mouth." Followed by the violent takedown. Graves watched the video, his eyes wide. He let out a low whistle. "That," Graves said, pointing at the screen, "is the most beautiful piece of evidence I've ever seen. He didn't just violate your rights, Derek. He dug his own grave, jumped in, and pulled the dirt over his head." Graves filed the lawsuit the next morning. He didn't ask for $500,000. He asked for $2.1 million. The city of Cedar Ridge went into panic mode. The city council held an emergency meeting. Their lawyers told them they had 0 chance of winning in court. If this went to a jury, especially with that video, the jury wouldn't just award damages. They would award punitive damages that would bankrupt the municipality. But Reed, fueled by a mixture of denial and the bad advice of his union rep, refused to resign. He insisted he had done nothing wrong. He demanded his day in court, so Elijah Graves gave it to him. He subpoenaed Reed for a deposition. The deposition took place in a sterile conference room in the federal courthouse. Reed sat across from Graves. He was wearing a suit that didn't fit, looking smaller and paler than he had in uniform. His union lawyer sat next to him, looking miserable. A camera was recording. "Officer Reed?" Graves began, his voice silky smooth. "Why did you pull Agent Vaughn over?" "He was driving suspiciously," Reed said, sticking to the script. "Suspiciously? Was he swerving?" "No." Was he speeding? No. So driving the speed limit and staying in your lane is suspicious in Cedar Ridge? He looked like he was casing the area. Graves smiled. Casing the area? Route 9 is a highway, Officer Reed. There's nothing to case but pine trees and armadillos. Or did you mean he looked like he didn't belong? I used my discretion, Reed mumbled. Let's talk about the smell, Graves said. You stated in your report, which you filed under penalty of perjury, that you smelled marijuana. Is that correct? Yes, strong odor. Graves slid a piece of paper across the table. This is the lab report from the FBI evidence response team. They vacuumed that car. They swabbed every inch. Do you know what they found? Reed stayed silent. They found zero trace of cannabis, no particulate matter, no residue, nothing. And Agent Vaughn's blood test taken shortly after you arrested him was clean. So, Officer Reed, are you lying now or were you lying then? I thought I smelled it, Reed stammered. Maybe it was coming from outside. From outside? Graves laughed, a harsh barking sound. On a highway doing 55? Officer, you are aware that Agent Vaughn is a teetotaler? He has never smoked a cigarette, let alone marijuana, in his life. Graves leaned in, closing the distance. You lied to manufacture a probable cause because you wanted to pull a black man out of a nice car. Isn't that the truth? No, I'm not a racist, Reed shouted, his face reddening. Then explain this, Graves said. He played the video clip. Just get the ID, boy. The room went silent. Is boy standard police terminology in Cedar Ridge? Graves asked quietly. Reed looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the ceiling. It's just a figure of speech, Reed whispered. No, Officer Reed, Graves said, closing his file. It is a relic of a time you seem to think we are still living in. But I have news for you. That time is over and you are about to pay the bill. Reed broke. He put his head on the table and began to sob. It wasn't the crying of a man who was sorry. It was the crying of a bully who had finally met someone he couldn't hit. The deposition lasted hours. By the end, Reed had admitted to falsifying the report, admitted to ignoring the badge, and admitted to trying to destroy the evidence. The city attorney called Graves minutes after the deposition ended. We surrender, the attorney said. What will it take to make this stop? Graves looked at Derek, who was sitting in the corner of the room, watching the man who had humiliated him fall apart. $2.1 million, Derek said, and Reed surrenders his certification. He never wears a badge again, anywhere. Graves repeated the terms into the phone. Done, the city attorney said. But the story wasn't over. The check was just the beginning of the karma. Because while the civil suit was settling, Special Agent Hale was finalizing the criminal indictments. Reed wasn't just losing his job and his house. He was about to lose his freedom. The civil settlement of $2.1 million was a staggering blow to the city of Cedar Ridge. But for Colton Reed, it was only the opening salvo. Money could be printed. Freedom could not. While the lawyers were still drying the ink on the settlement check, the United States Department of Justice was quietly assembling a grand jury. Months after the incident on Route 9, the hammer dropped. It was early morning, ironically the same time Reed usually started his shift. But today, he wasn't putting on a uniform. He was sleeping in his boxers on the couch, having been kicked out of the bedroom by his wife, Vanessa, who was buckling under the strain of the public humiliation. The front door didn't just knock, it shook. Boom, boom, boom. FBI warrant, open the door. Reed scrambled off the couch, heart hammering against his ribs. Before he could even reach the knob, the door was breached with a battering ram. A tactical team flooded the small living room. These weren't the local deputies he used to joke with. These were federal agents in full tactical gear, moving with terrifying efficiency. "Colton Reed, hands! Show me your hands!" Reed froze, raising his trembling hands. He was thrown to the floor, the carpet scratching his face. The sensation of cold steel ratcheting around his wrists was familiar. He had done it to hundreds of people, but feeling it on his own skin was a shock that made him gasp. "Colton Reed, you are under arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, and perjury. You have the right to remain silent." They hauled him out to the street. The entire neighborhood was watching. Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman next door who used to bake him cookies, stood on her porch, shaking her head. The mailman paused his truck. Reed, the man who had strutted through town like a king, was now dragged out in his underwear, head bowed, broken. The trial, United States versus Colton Reed, was held in the federal district court in Columbia. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled with civil rights activists, reporters, and citizens of Cedar Ridge who were tired of the tyranny. Presiding was Judge Victor Corwin, a no-nonsense jurist known for his harsh sentences on public corruption cases. The prosecution was led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Mitchell. Mitchell didn't yell. He didn't pace. He simply laid out the facts with the precision of a surgeon. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Mitchell began, "Officer Reed didn't just arrest a man that day. He arrested the Constitution. He decided that his badge gave him the right to be judge, jury, and executioner on the side of a highway. He was wrong. Reed's defense attorney, a sleek, expensive lawyer named Nolan Graves, hired by the police union, tried to paint Reed as a man under pressure. Officer Reed was in a high-stress situation," Graves argued, sweating under the courtroom lights. "He saw a suspect reaching for a weapon. He made a split-second decision to protect the community. Can we fault a man for wanting to go home to his family?" It was a good narrative until Officer Kendra Voss took the stand. Voss walked in wearing civilian clothes. She had resigned from the force weeks after the incident, unable to stomach the corruption any longer. She looked at Reed, who was staring at her with pleading eyes, and she looked away. "Miss Voss," Mitchell asked, "did you see Agent Vaughn reach for a weapon?" "No," Voss said clearly. His hands were in the air. He was narrating his movements. He was the calmest person on the scene. "Did you feel threatened by Agent Vaughn?" "No, I felt threatened by Officer Reed." A gasp went through the gallery. "Why?" Mitchell pressed. "Because he was out of control," Voss said, her voice trembling. "He was screaming. He was shaking. He had his gun pointed at the back of a man's head who was already on his knees. I thought he was going to execute him right there." Graves tried to cross-examine her to discredit her, but Voss held firm. She was the nail in Reed's coffin. But the final blow was the video. When Mitchell played the dashcam footage on the massive courtroom monitors, the silence was absolute. The jury watched Reed smirk. They watched him chew his toothpick. They heard the slur. They saw the violence. And they saw Derek Vaughn, cold, dignified, calm, and compliant, being treated like an animal. Derek took the stand last. He wore his FBI suit, the badge clipped to his belt. He didn't look at Reed. He looked at the jury. "Agent Vaughn," Mitchell asked, "how did that arrest make you feel?" Derek took a breath. "I have been in shootouts. I have taken down cartels. I have never been as afraid as I was that day. Not because I thought I would die, but because I knew that if I died, he would write the report. He would say I reached for a gun. And without that camera, everyone would have believed him. I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of the lie." The jury deliberated for a short time. When they returned, Reed stood up. His legs were shaking so badly he had to lean on the table. On count 1, deprivation of rights, guilty. On count 2, obstruction of justice, guilty. On count 3, perjury, guilty. Reed collapsed back into his chair. He put his head in his hands. His wife, sitting in the back row, didn't cry. She simply stood up, gathered her purse, and walked out of the courtroom. She never looked back. Judge Corwin looked at Reed over his spectacles. "Colton Reed," the judge said, his voice echoing like doom. "You have disgraced your uniform. You have disgraced this court, and you have disgraced the very concept of law. You wanted to be a tough guy. You're about to find out how tough the federal penitentiary system is." The sentence: years in federal prison, no parole. As the marshals clicked the handcuffs onto Reed's wrists, the same wrists that had been so quick to cuff others, Reed looked at Derek across the aisle. "I'm sorry," Reed mouthed. Derek looked at him, his face impassive. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. The debt is paid. Karma, as they say, is a mirror. It reflects exactly what you put in front of it. For Colton Reed, the reflection was brutal. He was sent to a medium-security federal prison in West Virginia. Because he was a former cop, he couldn't be in the general population. He would have been killed in a day, so he was placed in protective custody. PC. PC sounds safe, but it's a special kind of hell. It's isolation. Reed spent nearly all day in a 6x8 cell. He had no friends. The guards despised him because he was a dirty cop who gave them all a bad name. The other inmates despised him because he was a cop. He lost everything. His wife divorced him months into his sentence, taking the house and the kids. She changed their last name so they wouldn't be associated with him. He missed his son's high school graduation. He missed his daughter's wedding. He sat in a concrete box, aging rapidly, his hair turning white, his body withering away. The $2.1 million settlement meant the city had to raise property taxes for years. Every time a citizen of Cedar Ridge opened their tax bill, they cursed Colton Reed's name. He wasn't a martyr. He was the town pariah. Chief Kane didn't escape either. The FBI investigation revealed the ghost files, and while he avoided prison by cutting a deal, he was fired in disgrace. He lost his pension. Hundreds of thousands in future benefits gone. He ended up working as a night security guard at a mall in a neighboring county. A bitter old man who told anyone who would listen that he was framed. And then there was Derek Vaughn. The $2.1 million check arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Derek looked at it for a long time. It was more money than he would make in decades at the Bureau. He didn't buy a sports car. He didn't buy a mansion. He started the Vaughn Initiative for Justice. Derek used the money to fund a legal aid clinic in Cedar Ridge, specifically designed to help people who had been victims of police misconduct, but couldn't afford a lawyer. He hired Kendra Voss, who had gone to law school after resigning, to run it. Together, they reviewed hundreds of old cases from the Cedar Ridge PD. They exonerated men who had been falsely imprisoned by Reed's unit. They got records expunged. They gave people their lives back. Derek continued his work with the FBI, but he was different now. He was a legend. Rookie agents looked up to him not just as a skilled investigator, but as a man who had stared down the barrel of corruption and didn't blink. Years later, Derek was driving down Route 9 again. He was in his own car this time, a modest sedan. He passed the spot where it had happened. The billboard for the divorce lawyer was gone, replaced by a sign for the Vaughn Legal Clinic, Justice for All. He slowed down just for a second. The ghost of that day, the heat, the fear, the anger, was gone. In its place was something cleaner. Justice. He smiled, turned up the radio, and drove on. The road ahead was clear. This story isn't just about a bad cop or a settlement check. It's a reminder that authority without accountability is tyranny. Colton Reed thought his badge was a shield that would protect him from his own prejudices. He thought the dark tint of a car window was enough to hide the truth. But in the age of cameras and courage, the darkness has nowhere to hide. It took $2.1 million to settle the lawsuit. But the real cost was paid by a man who lost his freedom, his family, and his name because he forgot the most important rule of law enforcement. You serve the people. You don't own them. Derek Vaughn didn't just win a lawsuit. He dismantled a corrupt system. He proved that even when you are on your knees in the dirt, if you have the truth on your side, you are standing taller than the man with the gun. Justice may be slow and it may be expensive, but when it arrives with the weight of a freight train. If you believe in justice served cold and karma hitting hard, make sure to hit that like button right now. It helps us share these important stories with more people. And if you want to see more true crime dramas, legal breakdowns, and stories where the underdog wins against the odds, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the truth always wins in the end.